Bumpity bump down the road came little white truck with good friend Tow. Oh gosh, oh, he's just hitting all of those vehicles, and he's still going. Oh boy. Seattle driving tends to be less like a storybook and more like a Stephen King novel. We've got more monstrous drivers to come, starting with this pair racing down MLK in South Seattle. Watch the top left corner of your screen, where Tweedledee and Tweedledumbass come tearing down a surface street at highway speeds. That driver demolishes another vehicle, flipping it over, sending sparks flying, and leaving a wheel behind in the crosswalk. High speeds are to blame for the next few crashes, too. This driver is going to properly proceed through the intersection before changing lanes to pull into a parking lot. But the driver of a red SUV is going to come blasting down the bus lane. He smashes right into that turning vehicle. It's going way too fast. Not a bus. Almost certainly a disappointment to their parents. Further north on Aurora, yet another driver speeding down the bus lane is going to cause a crash. Watch the top right corner of your screen. The driver clips the rear of a stopped vehicle and barely avoids smashing into the other vehicles waiting at the light. Just a complete failure of a driver. Of course, it's not just high speeds that lead to crashes. Drivers just not paying attention are to blame for a lot of collisions, including many red light crashes. First up, MLK and Yesler, where the driver coming towards the camera seems to have a red light. I hope that text was worth it. 5th and Madison downtown. This is a very common spot for red light crashes. I'm not totally sure why, but we seem to see several in every video. If anybody can shed any light, let me know. Still downtown at 5th and Spring. Not sure if the driver of this white SUV going uphill is looking at the wrong traffic light or if they're just brain dead, but they roll right through a red light and they get hit hard. This one was captured on a second traffic camera as well. And watch the intersection at the top of your screen for a driver who blows a red light and causes a crash. I hope they drop their phone in a public toilet. And not to be outdone, this driver just a few blocks away runs their red light and hits 2 different vehicles. Not sure where they learned to drive. Now, speaking of learning to drive, one of the vehicles they hit was from Discount Driving School. Talk about a traumatizing lesson. I remember when I was learning to drive, I got stuck on a hill with wet leaves under the tires and burned some rubber trying to get going again. That was stressful enough. I don't know what I would have done if I got in a crash during a lesson. Thankfully, no serious physical injuries here, and hopefully that student will avoid driving distracted now that they've seen what the outcome can be. And now, a calming interlude. It's evening in Broadview. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and the small silver SUVs are crashing into parked cars and sliding down the road on their sides like spawning salmon. And now, something special, as we get to witness the miracle of birth. A Seattle driver emerges from their vehicle for the first time. Eyes blinking, taking those tentative first steps into the bright new world. Now, much like a salmon, this driver lacks the ability to think. He's operating purely on instinct, seeking safety and more meth. It takes a few tries, but he's able to free himself from the shell of his SUV. He tries to push it back onto the tires, but it's no use. This driver has no choice but to gather up a few more supplies. This video is sponsored by Ladybug brand, always organic from farms big and small. Anyway, as I was saying, this driver has no choice but to gather up his few belongings and walk off into the sunset to start a new life, which he'll almost certainly screw up as badly as he screwed up his current one. Okay, let's talk about turns. Turning left through stopped traffic is one of the worst mistakes that otherwise good drivers tend to make. It's just not worth it. Circle the block, take a back road, turn at a traffic light. Just don't do this. Of course, that car speeding down the bus lane likely also partially to blame for this crash, although it is possible that they were preparing to turn right. Now, here's one on Aurora Avenue, similar situation, but now this driver is trying to cross 3 lanes of traffic. And once again, a bus lane bandit bashes them. That was a pretty hard hit, and so is this next one. Watch the white car in the middle of your screen. This driver unfortunately does not see a fast-moving pickup truck until it's too late. They get spun all the way around. There was a child in the white car, but thankfully everyone seemed to be okay, at least physically. Now, left turns always tricky for Seattle drivers. Here's a group of drivers that seem to be sharing one brain cell among them, and the last driver in line isn't using it when he turns directly in front of oncoming traffic. Same spot, different day. I'm not sure if the driver of this white SUV coming towards us is impaired, asleep, or on the phone, but they're going to go left of center and hit two other vehicles. Thankfully, speeds were slow, but this dipshit has no business being behind the wheel of an automobile. Neither does the dim-witted driver of this dark van coming towards us. Wait for it. There it is. They just come through a school zone, so I'm very glad that this pole wasn't a child on the sidewalk. In a proper country, they'd be banned from driving, but here they'll likely get away with a ticket, if that. Now watch this doofus in the left turn lane. He will not be turning left tonight. What he will do is drift across the intersection with his right turn signal on, and then collide head-on with the stopped vehicle waiting at the light. Now this driver, who is almost certainly intoxicated, stayed on scene for a few minutes before getting back into his car and then fleeing north towards, you guessed it, the lawless wasteland of Shoreline. Even the camera is shaking its head at this guy's audacity. Same spot a few days earlier. This driver stops to let a pedestrian cross before turning right, but their good deed backfires when they get rear-ended and knocked into the pedestrian. Thankfully, she seems okay, but the at-fault driver keeps on going, and the driver who was hit, after briefly talking to the pedestrian, decides to give chase. Switching cameras now. Here is the causing driver. They don't really seem to be fleeing, but they're not pulling over either. The driver that was hit speeds up, and the at-fault driver seems to gesture towards a parking lot, but the victim driver decides they're going to stop here. Not ideal, but also understandable, and in the end, it seems like they were able to exchange information. We've got a few more rear-end crashes to share. These are almost always preventable just by watching what's happening on the road in front of you. Something the driver of this dark-colored car doesn't seem to be doing is they don't even brake before smashing into that other vehicle. Watch here as the driver of an SUV causes a 3-vehicle collision. What a moron. Now keep an eye on this dark car at the top of your screen. This driver's not moving very fast, but they're just going to roll forward into the vehicle in front of them. I assume that driver was on their phone, probably texting their ex, who actually stopped loving them years ago and is now living her best life without him. It's too late, she's blocked his number, and the kids don't even email anymore. That's my assumption anyway. I can't think of any other reason for this crash to have happened. I do know why this next crash happens. It's because drivers coming from the right side of the screen are only allowed to turn right. This driver ignores that and gets flipped over. That's what happens when you think the basic rules don't apply to you. 30 seconds later, and we're going to see another driver try the exact same thing. God, I hate these people. Luckily for this dum-dum, oncoming traffic sees him in time, and a second collision is avoided. Really though, these are the kinds of drivers who have to ask a ChatGPT the difference between their asses and a hole in the ground. They're so foolish it would be funny if they weren't driving 3,000-pound death machines with the ability to kill or maim all of us who have the misfortune of sharing the road with them. Heading now to the Ballard Bridge for another special boy who thinks he doesn't need to follow the rules of the road. Instead of spending maybe 5 minutes crossing the bridge and turning around, he's going to spend hours dealing with insurance and repairs, not to mention the financial cost and the very real fact that he could have hurt or killed someone. Not sure what's worse, the entitlement or the stupidity. And while we're on the subject of things that piss me off, let's look at some rideshare drivers. Here we have multiple drivers using their park anywhere lights. The problem with only having your hazards on is that other drivers can't tell when you're about to abruptly pull back into traffic. Here's another driver trying to pull into traffic and failing miserably, not even sure where they were looking. Okay, here's a weird one. Gray car in the bottom right corner is creeping up slowly, and the black car behind them has its hazards on and some damage to the right rear bumper. They both pull over. 15 seconds later, the driver of the black car gets out, and the driver of the gray car just rams them. Driver of the black car, very lucky that they weren't hit. They end up repositioning their car farther up, and then everyone just hangs out until police and fire arrive. I tried to get more details off the scanner, but there wasn't much there. Just another day in Seattle, I guess. Okay, just 2 more crashes left, but they're both doozies. Watch this car coming towards the camera. This driver is coming extremely fast. She makes a hard right turn. Thankfully, no pedestrians trying to cross a crosswalk there. But that high-speed driver hits something. It's not clear what. My guess is that there's another car hidden behind that tree. Anyway, she gathers some things, yanks her dog out of the back seat, and wanders off. She came back briefly for another load of things from the car, but then she jogs off into the sunset. She's a little unsteady. It's unclear if she's intoxicated or just doesn't have enough brain cells to walk and breathe at the same time. Now, the only thing dumber than speeding is speeding in a car that tends to burst into flames when it crashes. That didn't stop the driver of this Tesla. Watch the top of your screen where we can see the headlights bouncing as the driver loses control and smashes into the median. That car continues around the corner and slides to a stop, already on fire. Here's the view from another camera. Amazingly, not only do the driver and passengers survive this hard crash, they seem fairly excited about this turn of events. At least one of them seems to be getting some pictures on his phone before they run off into the night, scattering like roaches. Meanwhile, the presumably stolen Tesla continues to smolder before completely bursting into flames. Crispy Tesla. The Seattle Fire Department, of course, arrived quickly on scene to knock that fire down. This is our last crash, but I'm uploading this video on Labor Day weekend, so I want to give a special shout out to all of my viewers who are union members. Unions, of course, responsible for things like our 8-hour workday, the fact that we get weekends off, child labor laws, workplace safety, and many other benefits that the folks currently in charge of our government are actively trying to strip away. Solidarity forever, power to the workers. Okay, I'll step off my soapbox and say thanks also to all of you. I really appreciate the views and comments. Remember, phone down, eyes up, drive safe, and I'll see you next time.